The Jorge Martin Aprilia situation. It's one we've talked about now for plenty of months, and I think that we're maybe getting the first sign that the relationship, not that it's getting given another chance, but they're being very professional about it. If you didn't know, this week, on Wednesday, the 9th of July, Jorge Martin completed 65 laps at the Misano circuit in a private test before his comeback, which is now that we know is for the Czech Grand Prix of Brno next week. All being well, after a final medical check, he'll be free to race for the first time since he had that incident at Qatar in April. And yeah, just giving my thoughts on how I think the situation is playing out. Of course, still when I see the photos of him on an Aprilia, and you know everything that came before that in terms of the contract stuff, the position of both parties, I find it very awkward still. And that's just me just looking at it from the outside. Imagine how it feels on the inside for the teams. But I just want to talk about it and how I think it's going to go. And yeah, I think professionalism from Aprilia and Martin, to his credit, over the past few days in terms of when this test was announced and stuff. I mean, they're working together, and it's a relationship that it's very public, as we know, for everyone else to see. We've seen both sides, as I say, Jorge Martin's management, and they firmly believe that he has the right to exit a clause in the contract and to activate it, and he's free to go wherever he wants next year. It's a performance clause. And Aprilia, on the other hand, there's like, well, no, he doesn't have the freedom to go where he wants unless an agreement is met with Aprilia. Or the other option is they're going to go to court and settle it, which I think, of course, is the very last resort. But Aprilia must be very confident with their legal team and just the situation they're in to feel that they can challenge this from Martin. And who knows what would happen if it did get to a court case. We're not even there yet. But it has been mentioned by Massimo Rivola, the Aprilia team boss. I think there's, yeah, an awkwardness definitely to it that for me it's just you kind of look at it and go, is this really the right thing? Of course, the Aprilia wants to have him there. I think they do anyway. In terms of they made a big push to sign him. They spent a lot of money on him. They want to get him on track, and they want to let him and his teammate Marco Bezzecchi lead the project in the best possible way. And to come on to that, Bezzecchi's like the how can I say, he's the little diamond in all this, that he's performed so well on the Aprilia. 2 podiums last time out at Assen, of course winning the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, and he's made steps with that bike. I don't think it's a bad bike at all. I'd be confident in saying at this point of the season it's probably the second best bike on the grid when you look at it behind Ducati. And I think that there's a sense that Aprilia feel that they've delivered the performance that Martin says they hadn't. And remember, it goes back to the French Grand Prix with this contract clause. I don't know the exact clause of what it is. Is it something to do with there had to be so many Aprilia riders inside the top six? So if there wasn't an Aprilia rider in the top six, he could then leave. Yeah, since the contract talk has kind of started, and the fact that Bezzecchi went on to win in the next race at Silverstone, and then again in Assen, fantastic performances to get on the podium, especially finishing second in the Grand Prix behind Marquez. Aprilia have delivered. And Martin, to his credit, yesterday was very positive about his day. The audio that we were sent by Aprilia just basically explains how much he enjoyed the day. He hasn't felt like that in a long time on the bike. And I wonder if he tested that bike yesterday and then went around Misano circuit and thought, you know what, it actually isn't that bad. And leads to my next point. Of course, we know about the contract stuff and I've said about it and about where Martin potentially is going to go. Why would you rather be on a Honda at this point of the season or at the point of next year? Be on the Aprilia? That clearly looks like the bike has made the jump. I can't understand it personally. I know it puts Honda in a real awkward position here because it's HRC, it's factory Honda, it's the greatest team in the history of Grand Prix racing in terms of numbers, prestige, legacy, history. It's Honda. I mean, would you say no to Honda? Like, many people in this situation would say no to Honda. Not many. And this is the thing, is Martin looking at it from a standpoint that he's viewing it for 27. He wants to go to a place where he thinks the bike will be better for 27 and the new regulations. Potentially. But for the next year and a half, I'd rather be on Aprilia, personally, because not much is going to change next year. As you know, it's pretty much going to be the same. Honda have won races this year. I think that there's still an element of risk for me that you'd rather stay on the Aprilia. What you can see currently is making progression. And the Honda has kind of went the opposite way since the French Grand Prix. It's all quite ironic, all this. But who knows? It's Jorge Martin's decision. It's Aprilia's decision. I wouldn't want to see it go to court, because I think that when things go to court, obviously, it's like a divorce, isn't it? Then they describe this as like a marriage. The soul gets ripped out of the thing, and I think it just puts everyone in an awkward spot. I know that purely because we've seen it before with other riders, not to the extent of how could I say, Johan Zarco leaving KTM in 2019. That was mid-season and it just ended. This would be something very different because we have someone who's not happy being in the team, publicly let that known. His management have said that he's free to go and leave, but then you get the team saying that he's not going to leave unless he finds an agreement out of the contract, and then there's going to be court involved if that doesn't get sorted. It's very different, and I can hope for Aprilia's sake, as a brand, I think they've handled it so well. They have been very professional. They've kept everyone up to date on where their stance is, and to Massimo Rivola's credit, in terms of a face of Aprilia, going and speaking to the media, being one of the only, if not the only team boss to do that, I think it shows great leadership from him, and I'd be very proud to have him as a boss if I was in that Aprilia corporation. I think that he's a great leader for that project, and he almost puts Aprilia on his sleeve and his heart, and he really believes and fights for what they want to do. He said, of course, he would protect Aprilia at all costs, and I like that. I like that from someone who is clearly passionate about the brand. But who knows? Aprilia have a lot of decision making to do, and you have to think, if Martin goes, who do they then replace Jorge Martin with? Which I think is a completely different question altogether. There's not many riders out there, but there is a few that you could think, for 1 year, they might be good on Aprilia. Would someone get promoted from a track house, for example? Would they look at Moto 2, or would they look at someone else outside of the Aprilia bubble, the Moto 2 bubble, and go, do you know what? Let's try and take a punt on someone else. But yeah, I'm really captivated by this story. It's quite rare in MotoGP that we've had something go to this extent. And it's maybe down to the fact that Martin has been on the grid. He's only been on the grid for one weekend. And his title charge, it will go down in history as probably the most bizarre title defense, whatever you want to call it, ever. Because we simply haven't seen him up to this point. When he comes back at Brno, of course he's going to get asked so many questions about his future, and it's kind of going to take away from the whole Aprilia stuff in terms of the on-track action that he actually has to ride the bike, which of course is what us fans want to see him out on track on the bike. But it's so predominantly focused on his future when he really should be focusing on getting bike fit again, because as you know, it's a results-based business. Your shelf life as a MotoGP rider can only last so long. Yes, he is a world champion, but he's not going to be world champion this year. And then you essentially get labelled as an ex-world champion, and people then start having to doubt if you can ever do it again. And that has a cost effect on your future and how other teams, manufacturers value you in terms of your input and your status as a rider of being the top ones in the paddock. So I'm really interested to see how this plays out. And yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe if you're brand new, and we'll see you next time. Take care.